Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so Martin Luther King weekend. I'll sit down here. Oh. All right. Today's story and theme, not just how cool it is that it's Martin Luther King weekend, was the theme of integrity. You guys know what the word integrity means? Have an idea? Doug? It's about me. I think that's close. You forget. All right, well, it is about me. And I tried to pick a story that could kind of go with integrity and also be Martin Luther King related. So a better story than a children's story told by his own sister, Christine King Ferris, wrote a book about her brother, Martin Luther, and they called him ML, and she tells the story of what that was like growing up with someone who would go on to change the world. And see if you can pick out what integrity means to you in the story, I would say. So, let's try to hold her pause. She's so great. Okay, we were born in the same room, my brother Martin and I. I was an early baby, born sooner than expected. Mother dear and Daddy placed me in the chifferobe drawer, that's how I say it, chifferobe, that stood in the corner of their upstairs bedroom. I got a crib a few days afterwards. A year and a half later, Martin spent his first night in that hand-me-down crib in the very same room. So there's Christine, and there's Martin Luther, the parents. The house where we were born belonged to Mother Dear's parents, our grandparents, the Reverend and Mrs. A.D. Williams. We lived there with them and our Aunt Ida, our grandmother's sister. I'm saying that's Grandma, or Aunt Ida, that's it. And that's Grandma and Grandpa. Also Reverends, I did not know. And not long after my brother Martin, who we called ML, because he and Daddy had the same name, he's the junior, our baby brother was born. His name was Alfred Daniel, but we called him AD after our grandfather. They called me Christine, so here's Christine, and like 3 peas in one pod, we grew together. Our days and rooms were filled with adventure stories and tinker toys, with dolls and Monopoly and Chinese checkers. And although Daddy, who was an important minister, and Mother Dear, who was known far and wide as a musician, often had work that took them away from home, our grandmother was always there to help take care of us. I remember days sitting at their feet as she and Aunt Ida filled us with grand memories of their childhood and read to us about the wonderful places in the world. The fun begins, though. Here, this is good. I laughed anyway. And of course, my brothers and I had each other. We 3 stuck together like the pages in a brand new book. And being normal young children, we were almost always up to something. Our best prank involved a fur piece that belonged to our grandmother. It looked almost alive. It looks like little foxes or something. With its tiny feet and little head and gleaming glass eyes. So every once in a while, in the waning light of evening, we'd tie that fur piece to a stick, and hiding behind the hedge in front of our house, we would dangle it in front of unsuspecting passerby. Or you could hear the screams of fright all across the neighborhood. Ah! What is it? 2 foxes jumping out of the bushes. And they're all smiling. ML, his sister and brother. All right. And the next thing they did. Then there was the time Mother Dear decided that her children should all learn to play piano. I didn't mind too much, but ML and AD preferred being outside to being stuck inside with our piano teacher, Mr. Man, who would wrap your knuckles with a ruler just for playing the wrong notes. Well, one morning, ML and AD decided to loosen the legs on the piano bench so we wouldn't have to practice. We didn't tell Mr. Man. And when he sat, crash, down he went with his big face. And they're giggling. But mostly we were good, obedient children. ML did learn to play a few songs on the piano. He even went off to sing with our mother a time or two. Given his love for singing and music, I'm sure he could have become as good a musician as our mother had his life not called him down a different path. But that's just what his life did. My brothers and I grew up a long time ago, back in a time when certain places in our country had unfair laws that said it was right to keep black people separate because our skin was darker and our ancestors had been captured in far-off Africa and brought to America as slaves. So there's ML playing on the piano. It is a little bit longer of a story, but I paper clipped it to kind of shorten Christine's story. What's up, Bill Paper? Anyway, sorry, I digress. When we were young, all the children along Auburn Avenue played together, even the two boys whose parents owned the store. And since our house was a favorite gathering place, those boys played with us in our backyard. So here's all the boys and girls playing together. There's Christine, proudly playing pranks in the backyard. Yeah, not always good all the time, right? It's hard to do, even for me. And they ran with ML and AD to the firehouse on the corner where they watched the engines and the firemen. The thought of not playing with those kids because they were different, because they were white and we were black, never entered our minds. The old fire engine, that's so cool. Well, one day, ML and AD went to get their playmates from across the street, just as they had done 100 times before, but they came home alone. The boys had told my brothers they couldn't play together anymore because AD and ML were Negroes. And that was it. Shortly afterward, the family sold the store and moved away. We never saw or heard from them again. Looking back, I realized it was only a matter of time before the generations of cruelty and injustice that Daddy and Mother Dear and Mama and Aunt Ida had been shielding us from finally broke through. But back then, it was a crushing blow that seemed to come out of nowhere. So here's the store and the two boys, sad they can't play, and ML and AD walking off, equally sad. So here's a question. Why do white people treat colored people so mean? ML asked Mother Dear afterwards. And with me and ML and AD all standing in front of her, trying our best to understand, Mother Dear gave us the reason behind it all. Her words explained the streetcars our family avoided, and the whites only sign that kept us off the elevator at City Hall. Her words told us why there were parks and museums that black people could not visit, and why some restaurants refused to serve us, and why hotels wouldn't give us rooms, and why theaters would only allow us to watch their picture shows from the balcony. But her words also gave us hope. So let's see what Mom said. She answered simply, because they just don't understand that everyone is the same, but someday it will be better. And my brother ML looked up into, I get all choked up with this, sorry. This is so sweet. My brother ML looked up into our mother's face and said the words I remember to this day. I gotta breathe. He said, Mother Dear, one day I'm going to turn this world upside down. His sister remembers him saying that. That was really cool. Alright, so, I got a little sappy, sorry. I skipped that paperclip again, so afterwards, if you guys want to read the whole story, you can. And I can read it too. And Daddy practiced what he preached. He always stood up for himself when confronted with hatred and bigotry, and each day he shared his encounters at the dinner table. When a shoe salesman told Daddy and ML that he'd only serve them in the back of the store because they were black, Daddy took ML somewhere else to buy new shoes. Another time, a police officer pulled Daddy over and called him boy. Daddy pointed to ML sitting next to him in the car and said, "This is a boy. I'm a man. And until you call me one, I will not listen to you." These stories were as nourishing as the food that was set before us. Okay, I promise I wouldn't cry for that. Okay, years would pass, and many new lessons would be learned. There would be numerous speeches and marches and prizes, but my brother never forgot the example of our father, or the promise he made to our mother on the day his friends turned him away. So here he is marching. Jobs for all now, voting rights now, end segregated schools. And when he was much older, my brother ML dreamed a dream. Very famous speech there. He did a picture of him getting ready to say those famous words, and then turn the world upside down. And this is what we're working towards today, even still. So that is only sideways. I like that. Today the world is only sideways. Not quite upside down yet. I like it. All right, so we don't want to be upside down, they'd fall. Yeah, change is scary. What's that? Because of gravity, yeah. Gravity and all the changes, yeah. So we'll have to come up with some science and technology to keep them on. In a new world, we have to make it on. But we can talk about it up in the play space if you want to go.
People actually don't walk on their heads on the other side of the world. Just kidding, everyone knows that.
You guys are great. We have to wrap up here. Thank you guys for this story time for all ages. Off we go.
A congregation is a community in which we share in one another's lives. We recognize that our relationships with one another are sacred, and we hold each other in love through both celebration and through grief. So we light a candle today with gratitude to Mary Hunter for her beautiful flower arrangements over the years. Thank you from the membership and flower committee. We light a candle with grief for Les Trujillo, whose two oldest surviving uncles passed away in 2014. Les is concerned about her father's mourning and her cousin's loss. We light a candle for Alex Matthews' granddaughter, who has suffered from chronic illness and has just started at a community college. We light a candle for those in France and around the world who are grieving those who were killed in the Charlie Hebdo office, knowing both that no one should be murdered for a cartoon and that those cartoons were racist. We remember all those suffering from cruelty and violence in the world, including both racism and fundamentalism. We light a candle in gratitude for our visiting speaker, Dr. Timuel Black, and the civil rights movement he represents. We remember those who built the path of justice on which we walk today with gratitude. We light a candle in celebration for Nancy and Chris's 9th anniversary, which is going to be on the 29th of January. We light a candle in hopes for healing for Irene Mostek, who suffered a fall just before Christmas and is now in rehabilitation. We send her our hopes for a smooth transition and a bright future. We light a candle in celebration for the birth of Madeline Leah Franco, new granddaughter to Leah Shapiro. Madeline was born 2 weeks ago, a joyful 7 pounds, 9 ounces, and 20.5 inches. And finally, we light a candle for all those joys and concerns that remain unspoken, but still move in our hearts. So I'd like to invite you all to find yourself in your pews now. Find your sit bone.